Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Danielle Lord. I am the founder and principal of Archetype Learning Solutions. And on this channel, we talk about all things employee engagement. Our strategy is simple: engage everyone every day through quality daily interactions. The best part about this is that they are completely free to you as a manager, as the owner of an organization. Engagement should not cost you anything at all, but a little bit of your time and a little bit of your heart. So that's why we have 12 heart-centered strategies that we focus on. And today I wanted to talk a little bit more about meetings and do a little bit of myth busting. I also want to add that when it comes to employee engagement, we dive a little deeper into some of the human dynamics, some of the psychology that surrounds a lot of what we experience in organizations, because we all bring our full self to the organization, whether we advertise that, we show up, and everything that you don't see under that iceberg of personality and humanness, etc., it all shows up in the organization. We can hide it for a little bit of time, but eventually all those human dynamics are going to show up. So we like to unpack and explore a little bit of the psychology as well. So what I wanted to talk about a little bit today is a couple of myths related to meetings and how humans show up in the workplace. So in September, so end of September right now, but September, I usually focus on our strategy of making meetings really meaningful in terms of focusing on relationship and focusing on the professional interactions that we have with each other and through that build trust and communication, et cetera, and how we can use or rethink how we use meetings, not only in terms of the task and the productivity and meeting our goals, but also to carve out a little bit of time to get to know one another, to enhance those relationships, but also then to make sure that we're providing that psychological safety so we can enhance trust and communication when we do come together in meetings. And so I've had some folks say to me in the past, well, I work in the trades, or I work in healthcare, and we're a continuous 24/7 operation. And so we generally don't have, meetings with the team. So first myth that we have to bust here today is that you don't have to sit around the conference room table and have an agenda to have a meeting, right? Anytime we're engaging with someone, we should consider that some type of a meeting. And stand-up meetings that are common in a production or manufacturing environment, as well as healthcare, those are essentially a meeting. It's just a little different shape and structure. It's usually folks that are standing up in a little huddle and they're having a little bit of a handoff between shifts and talking a little bit about what happened on the previous shift and preparing for the shift that's ahead of them. So you are having a meeting, whether it's a huddle, a stand-up, 3 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, it is still a meeting, and it is still an opportunity for you to use that time to connect with your team members. And what I hear a lot is that, well, our stand-ups are awful. Nobody likes to attend the stand-up meetings because they're filled with tension. Our supervisor uses that as an opportunity to berate, to belittle us. No one wants to be called out because no matter what we say, no matter how we say it, regardless, it's just going to end up, we're going to get yelled at, or we're going to get called out and somehow embarrassed. So we have to stop doing that. So that goes in the total opposite of even just meeting the basic limitations of a meeting to set productivity and tasks or talk about those things, and to completely disregard that element of psychological safety is really damaging, not only the engagement of your team, but the morale of your team, and you're setting up yourself, your organization, your team, your work for active sabotage. I don't think I've shared on this channel yet. I think I've talked about it, but I don't think I've shared the visual. So I'll try and put the visual in the link for this particular segment. But there was some work done in Harvard Business Review. It was either 2000 or 2013 by 3 researchers, Cuddy, Glick, and Fisk. And they talk about the importance of warmth within your manager and how they show up for you and engage with you and that correlation to engagement. So as you go up this matrix on the scale on the vertical axis, I can never remember if that's X or Y, but on the vertical axis, when you have warmth at the top of your scale, you're likely to have a far greater degree of engagement than when you have a manager who is behaving in a very cool, cold, or I guess at the bottom of that scale, we'll just call it the asshole level of the scale. When you get down into that factor of coolness, not receptive, not open, not showing any genuine kindness or empathy, we tend to see that's where we start to have disengagement. And remember what I always say, if you don't have to leave the organization to leave the organization. So if you've got someone who is stuck there and cannot get out of the current employee or employee status within your organization, or the exit costs are too high, as I've talked about, that individual will have a higher propensity to have active sabotage. It's just a fact of life, and we have to call it sabotage because that's what it is. We have to sometimes have that moment of being rattled awake into understanding that you are not creating a better situation. You are creating sabotage within your employees. So let's just call it what it is. Okay, so you're not doing yourself or your organization any favors. And as soon as you start to berate and belittle people for sharing information that you don't want to hear, people are going to clam up and stop giving you information at all. All right, so I mentioned kindness. Let's bust that myth as well, because we seem to have this belief or myth, if you will, that kindness equals coddling. And I particularly have seen this in the trades. Not necessarily in healthcare. Healthcare has its own issues, but certainly this idea that, well, if I'm kind at all, I'm going to be seen as soft, or I'm going to be seen as coddling my team members. Let's just bust that myth right there. The two are in no way equal to one another. We can be kind and we can still set very straightforward boundaries. And there's no reason for us to think that if I show any little bit or ounce of empathy, of warmth, again, back to that warmth scale, that somehow that's going to backfire on me. In fact, the complete opposite is true. So get over this idea that, well, if I'm kind, I'm going to be seen as coddling. We can do both. We can be kind, we can set clear boundaries, and it's all the better for everyone in the organization. In fact, I talk about this. I give a couple of examples in the book, Engaging Your Employees. So you can do both, and we should do both, because there's by no means any reason for us to not be kind to one another. We are all, after all humans trying to do the best that we can, sometimes in very difficult situations. And that reminds me that, you know, this idea of humanness and self-preservation will kick in at some point, and we can only put up with situations for so long before this whole idea of I have to take care of myself is going to start to show up, and individuals will start to behave accordingly. So let's talk a little bit about, as we're thinking about this idea of kindness and how we all show up and the human factor of this, I'm reminded of Dr. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so Dr. Maslow presents a triangle, if you will, with physiological needs being at the bottom of that pyramid. So shelter, food, those things that we need to survive. If we don't have those things, we can never get up to an advance within the pyramid. So those are fundamental and foundational for everyone. But right above the physiological need is this idea of safety. And safety includes a couple different things. One being security. So that could be financial security. That can also be job security. And if I'm constantly feeling like I'm under the microscope, am I going to be able to perform at my best? Because my brain is now getting flooded with cortisol, and I'm being put into what we call an amygdala hijack, or creating that fight or flight scenario where I cannot function at my best. So security around money, fiscal resources, et cetera. But then security that also relates to the psychological safety. So I have bad news to give you. Can I give you bad news in a way that you're going to be open and receptive to that, where we can have a conversation, or are you going to immediately begin to yell at me? So psychological safety, security, financial resources, etc. And then above that, there's this idea of love and belonging. And that is something that all humans need, is this understanding, or this knowing, this innate knowing that they do have a sense of belonging, even if it's within that organization or that team. And aside from the fact that we're there 8, 10, 12 hours a day, sometimes we have to have that sense of belonging and this idea of love, whatever qualifier you want to put around love. It doesn't necessarily mean romantic love or any of that, but we have to have this sense that we are cared for, which I think is an element of love. All right, so Maslow's hierarchy of needs, really, really crucial. And again, kind of busting this idea that, well, if I'm kind, I'm coddling. And I see that a lot in the trades, as I mentioned. So we're gonna, myth busting number 3 is that it's the trades, so it doesn't matter. I hear this a lot as well. And what I hear from supervisors is, well, it's a bunch of big burly men. And so I have to treat them as such, because I have to somehow not believe that this group of big burly men somehow has these same needs, human needs, than anybody else has. And so the only avenue I have to get across to them is through this kind of mental 2x4, where I'm constantly on top of them, making sure that they know that they're always being watched, being observed, being called out, being questioned. And again, that does nothing for us for our sense of security or psychological safety. So with that, I have seen just as many men going through the very negative reactions and shocks of really bad situations that have led to low engagement. So there is no thing that says women and men need different things when it comes to engagement overall. We are all human, and Dr. Maslow did not create 2 different pyramids, one female, one male. So these are human needs that are all ubiquitous. So the other thing I hear is, well, it's the trades, and so we're starting to have more women come in, and so now what, I'm supposed to behave differently because we have women entering the trades? No, you have humans in the trades, and they need, like I said, they need just as much engagement, just as much security as everybody else. So regardless of what your field of operations is, you have humans that are working for you, and we have to treat them all with the degree of knowing that we have psychological needs, and those needs stem from feeling loved, feeling included, feeling secure, and that is at the heart of employee engagement. All right, so whatever meeting you have, whether it's your one-to-one meeting, whether it's a casual conversation, a sit down at the conference room table, or a daily huddle, your meetings are very important, and they all require us as managers to be engaging in a way that is going to create the best experience for your team members. Imagine that you start your day in a daily huddle by getting yelled at or getting humiliated in front of your peers. You're starting somebody's day like that. Okay, there we go. I'm done. Those are my 3 myths that I wanted to bust. And remember, every interaction, every encounter that you have is a meeting and an opportunity for you to engage your team members. All right, if this content resonates with you, please share, like, subscribe, leave a comment. I'd love to continue the conversation through your comments. And of course, you can always get me at Danielle@archetypelearningsolutions.com. All right, hope to see you next time. Thanks for being with us today.